How's it going, everybody? Want to go ahead and spend some time with you guys doing this editing tutorial that I was talking about on my Instagram. So I want to go ahead and use 3 main apps, and I'm going to edit 3 different photos, just kind of in the similar style that I would for my Instagram posts, so that I can kind of show you guys what I do, and if you guys want to adopt that into your editing process, cool. The apps that I'm going to use are Adobe Lightroom. I'm going to use VSCO, which is a free app that you can download, and I'm also going to use just the standard iPhone editor that's built in on the gallery application that you can edit from. So we're gonna go ahead and start with the actual built-in iPhone application. So we're gonna go ahead and use one of my photos and we're gonna edit it and see what we can get to. So let's get started. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and open this photo up in the editor. So first thing you can do, you can hit auto and just kind of see what this thing does. So it looks like it really doesn't do too much when I press auto. So I'm just gonna go through and do all this stuff manually and kind of show you guys what I do. I don't ever go over to these presets or anything, not even really for style ideas. I guess you could, I just don't. So what we're gonna do first is we're gonna go ahead, and the main thing I like to do before I even really mess with too much, because a lot of the stuff that I post are sunsets, I like to go into the highlights, and I'm gonna go into the highlights here, and I'm gonna actually bring the highlights down as much as I can to really bring out as much detail as I can in the sky. So that looks good right there. The next thing I'll do is go into the shadows, and then for the shadows, you can kind of, you're just bringing up the shadowy, the darker parts of the photos. So sometimes I'll bring them up, sometimes I'll bring them down, just depends. In this photo specifically, I'm gonna bring them down a little bit, make it a little bit more moody. From the contrast, go ahead and turn up the contrast a little bit. It's just gonna be the difference between the lights and the dark. So if you really want that difference to stand out, you wanna add more contrast. If you want it to feel kind of flat, you would just take away contrast, but I'm gonna add a little bit on here, just like I said, so I'm gonna try to go for a moody look here. Brightness, I'm not really gonna touch right now. The black point, so this is just gonna be like adjusting the blacks in the photo, so either making them darker or lightening them up, which is gonna give you kind of that like faded effect on the photo. But I'm not really gonna touch this right now either. I'm gonna go into the vibrance and turn that up. I like to turn this up really as far as I can without breaking the colors in the photo. Looks good right there. If I push it any further, you can see like the purple and the clouds and stuff just starts to come out, and everything looks pixelated and ugly. So I think right around there is fine, maybe a little less. So the warmth is gonna be, this is you white balancing the photo. So you're either gonna make it more warm, it's gonna be more orange, or you're gonna cool it down, it's gonna make it more blue. So if we pull it over the orange, just so you can see what it looks like. Blue, if you cool it down, it'd be here. I tend to make my photos more warm, so I add more orange. Sunsets are orange, so I wanna add more orange. The tint is gonna be your green on one side and magenta on the other. So I don't ever go green for any reason. I pretty much always, if I'm gonna move it at all, I'll move it towards the magenta side to add some of that purple and the pinks in there. So that's fine there. Sharpness, I'm gonna skip for now. Definition, so I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit of this here. You're not gonna really notice too much though, unless you zoom in on the clouds or anything, but it just helps the image feel like it has more clarity. Noise reduction, I am gonna do. I usually put the noise reduction somewhere in the 40s, something like that, just to clear up any of the pixelated stuff that shows up in the photos. Vignette, if you want to add a vignette, you can. I don't typically add vignettes. So now that we've done most of the basic adjustments here, we'll go back to the saturation and just kind of play with it a little bit. See how far we can turn the saturation up without the colors looking too punchy and like fake, really. Which in this photo, it doesn't really look like we can push it too much. I wouldn't push it any further than this, which is 11 is what I got to. Brightness, you could, I don't know that I would really even change it. It's either gonna just make the photo look really washed out or really dark, and the colors are gonna just be, I don't know, a little too deep, I guess. But the next thing, we'll go to brilliance. This is kind of the same type of deal. I am actually gonna turn this up a little bit though, because I think the image looks too dark. So like if someone's scrolling on Instagram, I don't want them to skip my image because it doesn't pop off of the screen, you know? And then the exposure, I'm not really going to change either. It's the same thing. You're just trying to either brighten the photo or make it darker. Sometimes I do turn the exposure up a little bit just so that the image gets a little more effect from the backlight on the phone. But looking at it now, so like now that I brightened it up a little bit, I do want to go back into the vibrance, I think, and try to add a little bit more if I can, just to get a little more color in the middle of the photo. Yeah, so that's our before, that's our after. Solid. I'm pretty happy with that, all things considered. I mean, I don't use this app a lot really for anything. I use Lightroom primarily for all my photos, but I'm content with that. So let's move on to the next one and see how VSCO does with another one of my photos. So I have VSCO with the photo opened up. So the first thing in this app, you'll notice it loads all the presets. So like you could use some of these. Typically when you use these presets, like in my opinion, it does too much to the photo. So we're not going to use any of that. So we're going to go here into the actual settings and we're going to do all the lighting adjustments and the color adjustments just like we did in the last one. So first thing I want to do with this photo, I mean really I'd like to do the same thing. This app is a little bit different, so I don't have all the same options. So like if you go into the highlights here, like it doesn't really give me the option to do too much. I am going to play with them a little bit, but like see even the shadows, it just makes me bring it up too far. So I'm going to leave that. I am going to pull these highlights this way a little bit. It's weird that it tells me it's a plus number because it looks like I'm bringing the highlights down actually, because you can see the detail in the sky changing. But it's a free app, so whatever. The next thing I'm going to do is go straight to the white balance on this photo just to see what I can do in this application. So if I pull it cold, it's just really blue and looks weird and orange. So I think I'm gonna go a little bit orange, but not too much because this app doesn't seem to keep the photo looking really how I would like it to. Same thing, I'm gonna pull the magenta over a little bit. I don't know, somewhere around there is fine. I'm going to the saturation. I'm gonna pump this up a little bit because the color in the photo for whatever reason just looked really flat. Go into the clarity here, and we're going to turn this up. So same thing, it's going to bring more detail into it. You can see in like the bottom of the image where the lines are in the sand, and then up in the clouds, like it really kicks in there. So I'm going to pull that up to 4.7. Not any reason that I brought it to that number, it's just where it looked good, I thought. Add some sharpening here for the same reasons. It's going to hit the same spot. So like that little first part that you see in the sand and then a little bit in the sky. You'll get some sharpening on like the birds and on the waves and stuff too. Let's go into the exposure. Do I want to play with this at all? Not really. I'm going to leave that at 0. And then the contrast, add a tiny bit, but really I don't want to add too much because very quickly, I mean, you start to add too much contrast and the photo just starts looking really bad. So I'm going to add a tiny bit just so that it looks a little more appealing, I think. Skin tones in this app is going to really just play with like your mid-tone stuff, which is normally like the oranges, the yellows, reds, somewhere in that range. So you can see if I pull it one way, it goes more yellow, the other way it goes more red. I'm going to leave the orange just in the middle because I don't really want to pull it either way. In this instance, there's other instances where you would, but I'm not going to bother. Fade is basically what you're doing here is you're taking the blacks up in the photo, which is going to give you that faded effect. I don't really use that ever. I know a lot of people do like that style. I just don't use it. So you have the option here to do shadow tints and highlight tints too. I don't really love doing this. And the main reason I don't is just because I feel like it doesn't ever look how I want it to. For instance, if I wanted to take the shadows here, I don't just say, well, have this red. It just kind of does too much. I mean, if you bring it down here, you can get some decent color out of it, but I feel like it also fades the color a little bit. And like I said, since I don't really go for that faded look, it's not something that I use. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take that off. Now, the other things you'll notice on here, there is an HSL adjustment that you can do. This is something that is inside Lightroom that I use every single day that really helps take the photos to the next level, I think. But in this app, unless you pay for it, you can't use it, which is kind of a bummer because it's one of the best tools. For instance, if you just take it, let's go into the oranges here. Say I wanted to make these oranges a little bit more red. I would just pull this over and you can see the oranges start to change color. And this is something I do in Lightroom all the time, and it helps the color kind of stretch across the photo a little bit better. Like normally I would take the blue in this wave. I think I made it really teal in my original edit, so I'm gonna pull this towards the teal, see if it can get that same effect. I mean, doesn't really do quite the same in this app as it did in Lightroom, but either way, I mean, that's kind of cool. That's kind of what you can do. Like I said, you have to pay for it in order to use the HSL edits in this app, but even without it, I think the photo still looks cool. Let me see if I can get you the before, and then there's your after. So it's kind of the basic edits that I would do in any photo. I wouldn't go back and change the exposure in this or anything. The only other thing I would do is crop it. Always use that 4:5 crop for Instagram. So the other thing you want to do is just straighten the photo a little bit. Make sure it's as straight as you can get it. That is not straight at all. So let's fix that. Somewhere right around there probably. Yeah, close enough. But you get the point. So that's kind of what it looks like. And that's kind of what it looked like on the Instagram post as well. Like I said, just with the blues a little bit more teal because of the options I had in Lightroom. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go into Lightroom, and I'm gonna show you a photo that I edited yesterday actually, but I wanna show you some of the things that I did on it that I'm able to do in Lightroom that I'm not able to do in any of these free apps. The Lightroom version that I have is paid for. I do pay for the Adobe subscription, so I know there is a free version. I had someone tell me that. I don't know exactly what's included in that and what isn't, but these are the options I have in the one that I pay for, and I'll show you the reasons why. So this photo, first of all, you can see it right here. So this is the actual edited version. Let me show you the original. So as you can see, the colors in the sky and everything are already there. I mean, I'm not changing those too much. I'm really just bringing those colors out. The major thing that you'll notice the difference in is the darkness on the silhouette. So doing that is something that I do on not a lot of photos. A lot of times I can just bring the shadows down and it's enough for me to have the silhouettes where I want them, but in this one, I couldn't. So what I had to do is I had to actually go into the selective editing tool, and I had to create basically a mask of what I wanted to edit. So in this case, I took the paintbrush and I basically just colored in the whole person that I wanted to do the edit of. And from there, you can see I brought the shadows all the way down and I brought the contrast up, kind of giving it this look like a silhouette when it really wasn't in this instance. So like if I bring the shadows back up, you'll see like that's the portion that I'm editing. So I just brought those all the way down and tried to make it look as good as I could. So I also went in and did some like erasing on the edges and stuff here. And that just, you do that the same way. So if you're in the selective editing tool, once you have your edit selected, you can just hit the little eraser button and you can go in and erase whatever you wanted to kind of clean up the edges or whatever if you go a little overboard on one of the edits, or you go out of the lines or something like that. For this photo though, if you look at like the colors and stuff, so this shows the colors a little bit different for the white balance and everything, and I have more options if I wanted to do some sort of like preset, but I just used completely as shot. That was all in camera, but the main thing I did is bring up the vibrance, which gives me the push on all those colors, so it's more like how it looked in real life. If you notice on here, I don't really change the saturation. When I push the saturation on here, it just kind of gets a little crazy, and I don't need to do that. The vibrance really does enough for me. But when I go into the color mix tool on here, that's what gives me all those HSL adjustments for all of the primary colors in the photo. So you'll notice as I kind of just click through here, the oranges I didn't even really have to change, neither did I on the yellows. The reds I made a little bit more pink. Greens, obviously there's nothing there. I pushed the blues a little bit to the teal just to get that pop in the sky. But really it's not like anything major, it's just so that lighter blue kind of shines through. I turned the saturation up on that too. That's one of the beauties of the HSL adjustments is instead of saturating the whole photo, you can just up the saturation on certain colors, and it's going to really help the colors in the photo that you want to stand out without breaking the rest of the image. A lot of the time, if you just pull that saturation up, you start to see certain colors break. Like right here, you can see the reds and the oranges just kind of start to get really pixely, and it just doesn't look good. And the yellows too. I mean, they really all do when you push saturation that high. So try to push vibrance instead of saturation if you can, and use saturation adjustments as minimally as you can unless it's on like specific colors. Sometimes I'll take the oranges and I'll boost the saturation really high on the photo just depending on what it is. But let's look at one more. So like this photo, I'll just completely reset it real quick. to how it was when I imported it. So this is the photo itself. Let's go into it, and I'll do the same edit that I would if I was gonna post it. So I'm not really gonna bother with the white balance here. I mean, I can, but I like the way it looks out of camera, so I'm not gonna touch that. I'm not gonna tint green, I'm not gonna tint purple. Sometimes I do tint purple. You guys have seen some of those, so actually let's go ahead and do it, just because I do tint purple sometimes. I'm gonna boost the vibrance here a little bit too. So the main thing I'm watching when I'm boosting this vibrance is I'm looking at the clouds up top, just to see if they're gonna break. If the image starts to get pixelated and starts to break, then that's when I'll kind of tone it down. So I'm gonna turn down a little bit. We'll go into the lighting adjustments here. So you can hit auto and just kind of see what it does. Honestly, I couldn't even tell what it did, but if you look, it brought the highlights way down to give us a little more detail in the sky, which is the main thing I would have done anyways. And then here it boosted the shadows. So you can see like in the sand, it gets a little bit more visible. So I'm gonna boost those anyways. The contrast I'm not really gonna add here, but on this one I think I am gonna bring the exposure up a tiny bit just because I want the colors to, or the image itself I guess, to look more lively and be a little bit brighter. Then the one thing that I do in Lightroom also, so I go into the effects here and I go into dehaze, and I'll just pull the dehaze over a little bit till I can kind of get what I want out of it. What this will do is if you push it really far, it gets really crazy, but it really just kind of darkens certain parts of the photo and makes the colors look a little bit richer, I think. Clarity, I'll push this through too. It does a similar thing. You notice like these make the image a little bit darker, but you know, it's something you can go back and readjust to if you don't like the darkness that it adds. I'll go into the detail here too and do noise reduction just to make sure the image looks as smooth as I can get it. I make sure my color noise reduction is always up a little bit too, just to make sure the colors aren't blending together and getting really grainy or ugly. Other than that, let's go into the HSL adjustments and we'll kind of do the adjustments that I would do. So here, like, since I'm going purple and orange is kind of the ones I'll do together. So the first thing I'll do is go into the blue and pull that over towards the purple. So you can see in like the top of the sky and everything, all those blues that were there really just start to fill out purple, and it makes the image look better already. I'm gonna add a little bit of saturation. We go into purple itself, and I'm gonna add a little saturation there too, and then I'm gonna bring this a little bit towards the pink side, just to give it a little pink glow. And the pinks itself I'll boost also, so you get that little color change in the clouds. So like if you pull it all the way, you'll see what you're adjusting. You can just kind of tweak it to your liking so that it looks natural, still looks good. So now we're gonna go into the oranges. I want to add more orange to this photo because it's really, really purple. So what I'm actually gonna do first is go to yellow, and I'm gonna pull the yellow over to the orange. So that I'm basically adding more orange to the photo just from the yellows that were there. And I'm gonna go ahead and turn the saturation up on that a little bit. I'm gonna turn the saturation up quite a bit on the oranges also, so that those really stand out. If you go into the red and you pull it towards the pink, you'll probably, you'll see it trying to change some things in the clouds. I'm gonna pull it a little bit, but I don't wanna do too much just because I don't wanna take away from the oranges that are in the photo, because I think the orange and the purple go together really well. So like for luminance, if the color starts to get too saturated and it starts to break, sometimes you can save it by changing the luminance on it. And certain times, like, you'll need to add too much saturation to a color to get it in there, and the luminance can kind of help you save that and still retain some of the color without it looking flat or really broken and bad. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the edit that I would have done here in Lightroom. So here's your original photo, and here's the one that we edited just now. Like I said, the only other thing I would do, go into the crop, change this to a 4:5 crop for Instagram, and then just try to make sure it's as straight as possible. Yeah, and there you go. That's the finished photo that we could go ahead and throw it on Instagram, and there you go. So those are the 3 different apps that I wanted to show you guys today. So like I said, Lightroom's the one that I primarily use, or I do all my edits in. I use the actual iPhone editor that's built into the phone, so you don't have to download any additional app for that. And you can kind of see what you're able to make from that application. And then downloaded VSCO, and we use that one too. Like I said, it's free. There are additional options that you can pay for that'll give you more of the tools like what I have available to me in Lightroom. But if you don't want to pay for it, you can still get some really cool edits done on your photos using either of those 2 free apps. And there's plenty of other free apps you can use too. The main thing that I encourage you guys to do is keep practicing, keep editing your own photos. If you take a photo and it looks really good in camera, it's gonna look even better when you edit it. So take the time, edit it, make sure it looks good, and enjoy it, have fun. The most important thing that you guys remember is it's supposed to be fun. So have fun, practice editing. If you're gonna use a filter, go ahead and add the filter and try to bring it down to a manageable level so that it doesn't look like you just slapped a filter on your photo and then posted it, you know? So hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, go ahead and hit the like button. Feel free to subscribe if you guys are interested in subscribing. I don't typically make this kind of content, but if it's something you guys would like to see, let me know, and I'd be happy to show you guys what I know. I'm not saying that my way is the best way in any means. It's just what I've learned in the last couple months since I started doing photography. So thank you guys so much. And if you are watching this video and didn't come from my Instagram, go ahead and follow me on Instagram to see more of my sunset photos and the different types of things that I post on there. So thanks guys. See you.